The room smelled of polished wood and expensive ink. A single lamp lit the desk like a stage light, casting shadows that seemed to judge everything they touched. My husband Marcus sat with his ethos planted, eyes fixed on the ledger. His advisor Theodore slid forward. I stood by the doorway in my simple house dress, hair tied back, holding a tray of tea I'd made myself. I paused when I saw the papers spread across his desk like accusations waiting to be signed. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tension coiling in my stomach. He didn't look up. His pen hovered over signature line. "Just protecting what I built." I studied him, the hard set of his jaw, the way his fingers gripped that expensive pen like a weapon. This was the man I'd married 5 years ago, but tonight he felt like a stranger wearing my husband's face. I set the tea down gently, not wanting the cup to make a sound that might shatter whatever fragile thing hung in the air between us. As I turned to leave, I heard Theodore's quiet voice, "We'll test loyalty by tightening access." Marcus's reply came sharp and final, "Do it." My hand froze on the doorknob. Outside, a servant approached me and whispered, "Madam, your household account has been frozen." I tried the market first, because food was not a luxury, it was life. The morning air was thick with spice and smoke, groundnuts roasting somewhere, women calling prices with voices trained to carry across the crowded stalls. At Mrs. Adebayo's vegetable stand, I reached into my purse for the envelope that always held my household funds. My fingers found only air. A clerk from Marcus's household office appeared, stiff and apologetic. His name was Felix, and I'd known him for 3 years. Now he couldn't meet my eyes. "Madam," he said quietly, "the account isn't releasing funds." I felt the heat of eyes on my back. The line of people behind me shifted, whispers starting like matches catching fire. My cheeks warmed, but I kept my voice steady. "Then I'll pay with what I have." I counted the small bills in my personal wallet, enough for a much smaller portion than I needed. I apologized to Mrs. Adebayo like she was the one who'd been wronged. She blinked, confused, then quietly added an extra handful of tomatoes. "For your kindness," she said, her weathered hands gentle. I walked away with my dignity wounded but not destroyed. At home, I found a letter slipped under my bedroom door. No signature. Just an address: "If you need help, go to the workshop by the river road." The workshop sat tucked between warehouses, loud with hammer taps and the squeal of metal against stone. The air smelled of hot iron and oil that coated the back of my throat. A thin man with soot on his hands looked up when I entered. His eyes were old in a young face. "You're early," he said, as if he'd been expecting me. "I don't know you," I replied, one hand still on the door frame, ready to flee. "I found a note." He nodded once. "My name is Benjamin. I fix broken things. People, too, when I can." Everything about this felt like a trap. But his eyes were tired in a way that didn't know how to lie. They reminded me of my father's eyes before he died, honest, even when honesty hurt. "I'm not here to take charity," I said firmly. "I just want to understand why my life is being tightened like a rope around my throat." Benjamin wiped his hands on a rag. Sometimes a rope reveals the hand holding it. Before I could ask what that meant, he offered me a small pouch of coins from his workbench. My pride flared hot. But I remembered the children I'd seen at the market, watching fruit they couldn't afford with hollow eyes. "I can't accept this," I whispered. He leaned closer. "Then earn it. Come tomorrow. Help me feed the apprentices." As I left, I noticed a familiar car parked far down the street, Marcus's driver, watching. The next morning I returned, sleeves rolled up, hair wrapped tight in a headscarf that had belonged to my mother. I washed dishes in a bucket of cold water, stirred a pot over a charcoal stove, and served apprentices like I'd always been one of them. One apprentice, a boy with a bruised cheek and careful eyes, stared at me. You're that woman from the big house on Victoria Street." I smiled softly, spooning rice onto his plate. "I'm just a woman. Eat." He took the plate with both hands, like it might disappear if he wasn't careful. Outside, Marcus's driver watched from the car, reporting every detail into his phone. Later, I learned what he'd told my husband. She didn't argue. She didn't demand anything. She served them food with her own hands. I imagined Marcus's jaw tightening, the way it did when things didn't go according to his plans. He'd expected humiliation to break me into anger or tears. Instead, I'd become more human. Back at the workshop, Benjamin handed me a worn cloth and said, "Not everyone who loses comfort loses character." I paused, soap still on my hands. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't answer, only pointed to a wall where old newspaper clippings were pinned. One headline caught my eye: "Audit shock, companies hiding debt." I reached for it. Benjamin stopped me gently. "Not yet." That evening, a servant told me, "Madam, the staff have been instructed not to take orders from you." The house was still beautiful, but beauty without warmth is just decoration. Just expensive things arranged to impress people who don't matter. A maid named Grace walked past me as if I was air. The cook pretended not to hear my request for tea. Doors that once opened at my approach now stayed closed. I stood in the hallway of my own home and felt the strange loneliness of being ignored inside walls that bore my name too. Then I heard it, whispers from the kitchen. She must have done something terrible. They say the boss is testing her. Like she's a product, not a person. Testing. The word burned. As if 5 years of marriage, 5 years of standing beside him at galas and fundraisers, 5 years of building a home, all of it meant nothing compared to whatever suspicion had poisoned his mind. I went to the backyard where the gardener, Mr. Okafor, always greeted me with a smile and updates about the roses. Today, he avoided my eyes like I carried disease. I bent down, picked up a fallen seedling from where the wind had knocked it loose, and planted it back into the soil with my bare hands. Dirt pushed under my fingernails. Mr. Okafor watched, conflicted. I looked up at him. A home survives on small kindnesses, not fear. His expression cracked. He nodded slightly, almost ashamed. That night, I returned to the workshop and found Benjamin waiting with a small bowl of pepper soup. "You didn't have to come back," he said. I took the bowl with both hands. "Yes, I did." He lowered his voice. "Tomorrow, someone will accuse you of stealing. Don't defend yourself loudly." The next day, the household accountant, a rigid man named Victor with neat pens always clipped to his shirt pocket, confronted me in front of the assembled staff. "Funds have gone missing," he announced, voice carrying through the corridor. "Madam, it appears you attempted withdrawal despite the restriction." The room froze. Heads tilted. Eyes sharpened with judgment. I could feel like needles in my skin. Marcus sat in his reading chair nearby, pretending to review a document. But I knew him. His ears were open, waiting for me to crumble. I looked at Victor, then at the staff watching this performance. My voice came out quiet but clear. "Show me the proof." Victor waved a document triumphantly. "It's here. Your signature." I didn't snatch it. I didn't shout. I simply said, "Then call the auditors. Independent ones." A murmur rolled through the room like thunder before rain. Theodore, Marcus's advisor, shifted uncomfortably near the window. Victor stiffened. "We can handle this internally, madam." My eyes didn't blink. "No. If my name is being spoken, let truth speak louder." For the first time, Marcus looked up from his fake reading. He saw something that unsettled him. My calm wasn't weakness. It was discipline born from knowing I'd done nothing wrong. Victor's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That night, Benjamin slipped me another note. "The audit has already begun. It isn't only on you." My hands shook as I read those words by candlelight. In the market the next morning, Mrs. Adebayo called me over with urgent gestures. "Madam," she whispered, pulling me close, "someone paid your balance yesterday." Quietly. A man with suit on his hands. My throat tightened. Benjamin. A stranger showing me more kindness than my own husband. I walked home with my purchases, and near the roadside, I saw a child barefoot, staring at a torn sandal dangling from one foot. Without thinking, I knelt and tied the strap with a strip of cloth from my shopping bag, repairing what I could. The child's mother watched with suspicion hardening her face. "Why are you doing that?" I smiled up at her. Because someone must. She didn't thank me. But she didn't stop me either. Later, at the workshop, Benjamin said, "People are watching you now. Not the way your husband watches. A different watching." I leaned forward across his cluttered workbench. "Tell me what you know." He glanced at the apprentices working nearby. "Not here. Too many ears that might carry words to wrong places." I nodded, understanding the weight of secrets. As I turned to leave, an apprentice I didn't recognize yet whispered urgently, "Madam, your husband's advisor came here earlier. He was asking about you." My blood went cold. Benjamin's face darkened like a storm cloud. "Theodore came here." "Yes," the apprentice confirmed. "He asked who funds the workshop. He asked why you come." My stomach tightened into a knot of fear and anger. He's trying to connect me to something that doesn't exist. Benjamin nodded slowly. "He's trying to frame you. Or scare you into silence." I felt my pulse rise, but I forced myself to breathe steadily. "Then tell me the truth. Who are you really?" Benjamin hesitated. Then he reached beneath his workbench and pulled out a folder wrapped carefully in oilcloth. He didn't open it. He just placed it on the table between us like a heavy secret that might explode if handled wrong. "If I open this," he said, voice low and serious, "your life changes. You may lose your marriage. You may lose your comfort. You may gain something bigger than both." My throat tightened. Every instinct screamed to walk away, to pretend I'd never found that note, never come to this workshop. But I'd spent 5 years in a marriage that was now testing me like an experiment. I was tired of not knowing the truth. "Open it," I said. Before his fingers could lift the cloth, the workshop door creaked. A shadow fell across the threshold, blocking the sunlight. A guard from Marcus's estate stepped inside, face impassive. "Madam, you're required at home. Now." I looked at Benjamin. He gave the smallest nod. Later. As I followed the guard outside, I saw Marcus's car waiting, engine running like a cage with wheels, exhaust rising in the morning air. That night, a long dining table stretched between Marcus and me like a cold river. Plates were set with Marcus's usual precision, but no one served food. The silence was thick enough to choke on. Marcus spoke first. "Where have you been going?" I met his gaze across that empty table. "I've been living. Which is apparently a crime in this house now." His expression tightened. "You've been seen in places that don't fit you. Places beneath your station. Places where people sweat for their bread." I asked quietly. "Yes, I have." He leaned back in his chair. "You're my wife. You represent my name, my reputation." I swallowed hard. "Do I represent your name or your fear?" The room went still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hesitate. Theodore cleared his throat from the doorway where he'd been lurking. "Sir, we have preliminary findings. There are unusual transactions connected to that workshop." Marcus looked pleased. Finally, something concrete to accuse me with. My hands clenched beneath the table, nails digging into my palms. Unusual doesn't mean criminal. Marcus stared at me as if he didn't recognize the spine I'd suddenly found. "The account shows money moving," Theodore continued smoothly, "in patterns that suggest coordination." I fought to keep my voice steady. Coordination with what? Feeding hungry apprentices. Theodore's smile was thin and sharp. "Or hiding funds." Marcus leaned forward. "Are you hiding money from me?" "No," I said, the word final. Theodore added quietly, almost gently, "and we found a trail that suggests connections to hidden accounts." Marcus's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Are you hiding money?" I inhaled slowly. "No." He leaned forward, eyes searching my face for cracks. "Then why do patterns point toward you?" I looked at him, not angry, hurt. Deeply, profoundly hurt. "Because you want them to." The truth of those words hung in the air like smoke. Theodore interjected smoothly, "Madam, if you cooperate, this investigation will be much easier for everyone." I turned to him, really seeing him for the first time. The way he stood too close to Marcus. The way he whispered. The way he smiled when I was in pain. Cooperate with what? I asked. A test. A trap. A story you've already written. Theodore's smile faltered just slightly. I stood, smoothing my dress with deliberate calm. If you want truth, bring independent auditors. Not your loyal dogs. Marcus's eyes narrowed dangerously. You're challenging me. I shook my head. I'm inviting you to stop humiliating me and start respecting the truth. For a moment, something flickered in his face. Shame, maybe. Recognition that he'd become someone his mother would have been ashamed of. But he crushed it quickly, like stepping on an insect. Fine, he said coldly. Independent auditors tomorrow. I walked toward the door with as much dignity as I could gather. As I left, I heard Marcus murmur to Theodore, words that followed me down the hall. If she fails this, I'll send her away. The auditors arrived the next morning with briefcases, neutral faces, and shoes that made sharp sounds on our marble floors, judgment walking in. They asked me for signatures. I gave them calmly, my hand steady despite everything. They asked where I'd been spending money. Food, I said. Transport. Supplies for feeding people at a workshop kitchen. One auditor raised an eyebrow. That's unusual for this household. I smiled gently. Kindness is always unusual in a world of tests. Marcus watched from the edge of the room, eyes hard, expecting the numbers to betray me somehow. Then an auditor named Mr. Adeyemi frowned at a page in his file. Sir, he said, addressing Marcus, this restriction on her accounts was initiated internally without proper authorization. Marcus stiffened. It's my household. My money. Mr. Adeyemi's tone remained professionally neutral. But the financial mechanisms used belong to corporate structures registered under regulatory oversight. That's irregular. Theodore's face tightened almost imperceptibly. I saw it. And I saw Marcus notice it too. Another auditor, a woman named Mrs. Oho, flipped through documents with growing interest. These routing patterns are quite complex. My advisor handles the complexities, Marcus said. Mrs. Oho looked up. Then we'll need to speak with him. Extensively. The lead auditor, Mr. Adeyemi, added quietly, we'll need access to your private corporate ledger, not just hers. I watched Marcus's face go from confident to concerned in the space of a heartbeat. That evening, I returned to the workshop, my mind spinning with everything I'd seen in the auditors' faces. Benjamin was waiting with the oilcloth folder on his workbench, like he'd known I'd come. They're widening the audit, I said, collapsing onto a stool. He nodded as if he'd expected nothing less. Because truth behaves like water. It finds cracks you didn't know existed. I stared at that folder, fear and curiosity warring inside me. What's inside? He finally opened it with careful fingers. Papers. Old contracts. Land deeds. Testimony letters written in careful handwriting. My eyes caught a photo, grainy but clear enough. A younger Marcus standing beside men I'd never seen before, hands clasped over property sign. His smile was different then. Hungrier. What is this? I whispered. Benjamin's voice dropped. A place your husband bought cheap when people were desperate. During the market crash 8 years ago. A place where promises were made and systematically broken. My chest tightened. Why do you have this? His gaze didn't waver. Because I was one of the people who suffered. The air felt too thin suddenly. He pointed at a name on one contract, then covered it with his thumb. And because the person you think is testing you has been tested before. By life. By consequence. And he learned nothing. I touched the edge of the photo with one finger. How many people? 43 families, Benjamin said quietly. 43 families displaced. A neighbor woman named Mrs. Chukwu, always watching, always commenting from behind her fence, cornered me near our gate the next morning. I heard they froze your accounts, she said, voice thick with barely concealed satisfaction. Is it true? People are saying you've been stealing. I sighed. Too tired for this. People say many things. She leaned in, perfume too strong. A woman who marries wealth must keep her hands exceptionally clean. I looked at her calmly. Clean hands aren't measured by money, Mrs. Chukwu. They're measured by what you do when no one is clapping for you. Her mouth tightened. You're proud. No, I said softly. I'm steady. There's a difference. She walked away shaking her head, and I watched her go with a strange sadness for how small her world had become. At home, the auditors asked for more documents. Mountains of them. Theodore began to sweat despite the air conditioning. And deep in a stack of papers that Mrs. Oho was reviewing with a magnifying glass, she found something. A transfer order. Signed with initials I recognized. Marcus's distinctive MAK. But routed through an account that bore my name. Mrs. Oho looked up slowly. Sir, she said to Marcus, why does this transaction route through a personal trust in your wife's name, without her signature? The room seemed to stop breathing. I felt every eye turn toward me. I never signed that, I said, voice clear. Marcus's face went stone. Are you suggesting someone forged it? Theodore quickly interjected, words tumbling out faster than usual. These things happen. Clerical errors. Automated routing systems sometimes. Mr. Adeyemi cut him off. This isn't clerical. This is a deliberate routing with manual authorization. I stared at the page Mrs. Oho held, then at Marcus. You put things in my name, I said slowly, each word deliberate, without telling me. His eyes flashed with something between guilt and defiance. I did what I had to do to protect the business structure. Or to protect yourself? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. The room filled with the sound of papers rustling, like nervous birds trying to escape. Marcus stood abruptly, chair scraping. Enough. We're pausing this audit. Mr. Adeyemi's tone hardened with professional authority. We cannot pause once irregularities are flagged, sir. That's not how this works. Theodore pulled Marcus aside, whispering urgently, but I heard fragments, files, tonight, before they. My stomach sank. Mrs. Oho caught my eye. She gave the smallest nod, she'd heard it too. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked like it was hiding secrets in its bones, in its walls. I walked quietly through dark corridors and saw light under Marcus's study door, late, when he should have been sleeping. Through a crack, I watched Marcus and Theodore packing documents into a metal case with urgent movements. My heart pounded so loud I was sure they'd hear it. I stepped back carefully, and as I turned, I bumped into a guard. His hand clamped my wrist. Madam, you shouldn't be here. My voice stayed calm despite the fear racing through me. I shouldn't be in my own home. The guard hesitated. In that pause, that brief moment of humanity interrupting duty, I slipped my wrist free and walked away as if I hadn't been threatened at all. In my room, I found a new note on my pillow. No signature. Meet at the River Road workshop before dawn. Bring nothing. Trust your feet. I pressed the note to my chest, heart hammering. Outside my window, I saw Marcus's car leave the compound, but through the rear window, I could see the back seat was empty. Just Theodore, driving alone, moving the files somewhere. I didn't sleep. I sat on my bed fully dressed, watching the darkness thin into grey, waiting for dawn. When the first light touched the horizon, I slipped out through the kitchen door that Mr. Okafor had once shown me, the one the guards didn't watch as carefully. The workshop appeared from the morning mist like a promise. The smell of damp earth and cold metal. Benjamin stood ready, coat on, eyes sharp with purpose. They're moving files, I said immediately. He nodded. I expected it. That's why I called you here. He handed me a small cloth bundle, tied carefully with string. Not money, he said before I could ask. Not jewels. Just truth. I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside were copies, photographed documents, carefully wrapped and protected. You copied them? I whispered. He nodded. A man who has been cheated learns to keep receipts. My throat tightened with gratitude and fear. Why give them to me? Because your goodness isn't performative, he said. And justice needs a clean carrier. Headlights swept the workshop suddenly, bright and searching. I stepped back, pulse racing. They found us. Benjamin grabbed my hand. No, someone else. Out of the car stepped Mr. Adeyemi, the lead auditor, alone, no official vehicle. He entered, face stern but eyes holding something that looked like respect. I shouldn't be here, he said. I held the bundle tighter against my chest. Then why are you? He exhaled, shoulders dropping slightly. Because the case has shifted. The inconsistencies we're finding are not on you, madam. Benjamin watched him carefully, protectively. Mr. Adeyemi continued. Your husband initiated this audit as a loyalty test. That much is clear. But the financial trails we've uncovered suggest long-standing concealment and possible fraud. The word fraud hit me like cold water. So he used me as a distraction, I said, voice flat with the realization. Mr. Adeyemi nodded slightly. And it almost worked, until your calm refusal to panic forced us to widen the scope of investigation. I swallowed hard. What happens now? His gaze flicked to the bundle in my hands. Now, the truth must be preserved before it disappears completely. He handed me an envelope stamped with an official government seal. An invitation. A protected hearing. A secure location. My fingers trembled as I took it. But be careful, Mr. Adeyemi added quietly. The person most dangerous in this story isn't your husband. It's the one guiding him. Theodore. Always Theodore. Come at noon today, Mr. Adeyemi said. And bring those copies. Back at the estate, Theodore greeted me at the door with warmth that felt like a knife wrapped in silk cloth. Madam, he said, smile too wide, you look tired. Stress does strange things to a person. I met his eyes. So does guilt. His smile widened further. Guilt is for people with soft hands who've never built anything. That night, Marcus confronted me in our bedroom, our space that no longer felt safe. His voice was low, almost pleading. Why are you making this difficult? If you just cooperate, we can move past this whole ugly situation. I stared at him, at this man I'd loved, maybe still loved. Past what, Marcus? You froze my life to see if I would betray you. His jaw clenched. I had to know. You don't understand the pressure, Then know this, I interrupted, voice steady despite the pain blooming in my chest. You didn't test my loyalty. You tested your ability to control me. And you failed. He flinched as if I'd struck him. If this audit continues, he whispered, it could destroy everything. I asked softly, the question I'd been holding, everything, or just you? His silence was answer enough. Later, lying in separate rooms, I heard him pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. And I clutched Benjamin's bundle of truth to my chest, knowing tomorrow would change everything. The morning sun felt like judgment as I dressed in my simplest clothes, no jewelry, no expensive fabric. Just me. Mr. Okafor found me in the garden. Madam, he whispered. Be careful. Theodore has been making calls all morning. I nodded, grateful for his concern. The invitation led me to a quiet government building far from the glittering districts. Plain walls, cold air, waiting chairs that smelled of disinfectant and years of difficult truths. I entered with Benjamin beside me, steady as a shadow. Mr. Adeyemi met us and guided us to a closed room with no windows. Inside were files, evidence boards, and one startling sight. A large printed chart showing money flow like tree roots, branching everywhere. At the center was my name, but only as a pass-through, a mask. Mr. Adeyemi pointed with a pen. This is how they hid transactions. Your identity became a shield for activities you never authorized. My breath caught. Without my consent. Without even my knowledge. Correct, he said. Then the door opened. A woman stepped in, older, composed, dressed simply but radiating authority that had nothing to do with wealth. Mr. Adeyemi stood straighter. Madam Chair. My stomach tightened. Chair of what? The woman studied me with eyes that had seen many people break under pressure. Mrs. Adewale, she said, using my married name, I am Justice Okonkwo. chair of the Financial Crimes Investigation Panel. My legs felt weak. She gestured to a seat. Please, sit. I sat, Benjamin beside me, the bundle still clutched in my hands. Justice Okonkwo's voice was gentle but carried weight that made the room seem smaller. We've been watching your situation for longer than you know. Watching me? I asked. Watching your husband, she corrected. But we needed to understand what kind of person stood closest to him, whether you were complicit or victim. My throat tightened. So I was tested by more than just my husband. Justice Okonkwo nodded. We don't build cases on assumptions. We needed to see how you responded when pressure came. And? I asked, barely breathing. You didn't become cruel, she said. You didn't become greedy. You didn't run. You became more human. Benjamin spoke for the first time. She fed my apprentices when she had nothing. Justice Okonkwo's eyes softened slightly. We know. We had observers. The implications crashed over me. All of it, the frozen accounts, the whispers, the tests, all of it observed, documented. Your husband's empire is under formal investigation, Justice Okonkwo continued. But this isn't just about money. It's about the people crushed to build that money. She slid a thick file toward me. Inside were testimonies from displaced families, handwritten letters, photographs of demolished homes, children's drawings of houses they'd lost. I recognized Marcus's signature on multiple documents. My hands trembled. He did all this. Yes, Justice Okonkwo said without mercy. And he structured it to make you appear complicit if anyone ever investigated. I felt sick. The audit will conclude in 3 days, she said. And the findings will name the culprit publicly, unless evidence disappears first. I looked down at Benjamin's bundle. Then you need these. I handed her the copies. Justice Okonkwo examined them carefully, then looked at Benjamin with new respect. You protected these well. I protected her, Benjamin said simply. Why? Justice Okonkwo asked. Because 43 families deserved someone to remember them. I returned home with empty hands but a full heart, terror and hope mixed equally. At the gate, guards searched bags routinely. My palms went cold even though I carried nothing incriminating now. I greeted the guard by name, Johnson, who had 3 children he sometimes mentioned. He hesitated, humanity interrupting duty, and waved me through without searching. Inside, the estate was tense. Staff moved like frightened birds sensing a storm. I found Marcus in his study, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking slightly as he poured a drink he didn't taste. He looked up when I entered. They're coming for me, he whispered, voice broken. My chest tightened despite everything. You started this. I didn't know, he said, voice cracking. I didn't know it would turn like this. I stared at him, this powerful man reduced to fear. You didn't think truth had teeth. He stood suddenly, desperate, reaching for me. Help me, please. I stepped back. I will help the truth. His face crumpled. Behind the curtain near the window, I saw movement. Theodore, listening, face unreadable. The next morning, Theodore approached me with careful politeness. Madam, he said, voice soft. The auditors require your presence again. Private meeting. Every instinct screamed trap. Where? He named a secluded office across town. When I arrived, the room was empty, until the door locked behind me with a click that echoed. Theodore stepped out from a side door, expression no longer friendly. You've been walking around with dangerous confidence, he said. I wonder where you got it. My heart hammered but my voice stayed steady. From being honest. You should try it. He laughed quietly, without humor. Honesty is only safe when it's useless. He moved closer, and I backed toward the wall. Give me what you're carrying. The copies. The evidence. I lifted my chin. I don't have them anymore. His eyes hardened like stone. Then your reputation dies today. He slid photographs onto the table. Images of me at the workshop, at the market, framed to look scandalous somehow. I stared at them, then looked up. You think shame controls me? He leaned in, breath smelling of coffee and desperation. It controls everyone. Not me, I said. Not anymore. The door burst open, revealing Marcus himself, standing frozen in the doorway. His face went pale as ash when he saw Theodore looming over me, saw the photographs scattered like accusations. You locked my wife in here? Marcus asked slowly, voice dangerous. Theodore didn't flinch. To protect you. She's compromising everything. Marcus looked at the photographs, then at me, eyes meeting mine across the space. Something broke inside him. I saw it happen. He turned to Theodore. You told me she was the risk. Theodore's smile thinned. She is. Because she's clean. And clean people make dirty men nervous. I spoke softly, but my words carried more power than shouting ever could. You tested me because you feared betrayal. But you've been betraying people long before you met me. Marcus's breath shook. I thought it was just business. The door opened wider. Benjamin stepped through, uninvited, fearless. Business doesn't excuse theft, he said. And pain doesn't disappear because you renamed it profit. Marcus stared at him. Who are you? Benjamin's eyes held steady. I'm someone your signature displaced. One of 43. Mr. Adeyemi entered behind them, official now, with 2 other investigators. The final report is ready, he announced. And the primary name on it is yours, Mr. Adewale. Marcus seemed to shrink. Theodore moved toward the door. I should go. This is between. You're not going anywhere, Mr. Adeyemi said. You're named too. Theodore's face went slack. We have evidence of conspiracy, Mr. Adeyemi continued. Deliberate fraud. Use of a spouse's identity without consent to shield illegal transactions. Marcus looked at me. I'm sorry. I wanted to believe him. Part of me still did. Sorry doesn't rebuild homes, Benjamin said quietly. The investigators took Theodore first, his protests fading as they led him away. Marcus remained, waiting for his turn. What happens now? I asked Mr. Adeyemi. Formal hearing, he said. Public. In 3 days. I nodded, exhausted. Marcus reached for my hand. I pulled back. I loved you, he whispered. I know, I said. But love without integrity is just a pretty word. They took him then, gently but firmly. And I stood in that empty room, finally alone with my thoughts. Benjamin touched my shoulder. You did well. I survived, I corrected. That's different from doing well. He nodded. Sometimes survival is the first step toward restoration. Outside, the sun was setting, painting everything gold. I thought about the 43 families. About second chances. About truth that cuts but also heals. The hearing took place in a grand chamber, high ceiling, echoing footsteps, serious faces seated behind polished desks where justice lived. No music. No glamour. Just consequence. Marcus sat at a table, shoulders heavy, no longer the untouchable man from magazine covers and business awards. I sat separately, not beside him, not as his shield, but as a witness to truth. Mr. Adeyemi stood and read the findings in a voice that filled every corner. Funds misrouted. Land acquired under deceptive contracts during the market crash. Accounts hidden under trusts, including one under my name without my consent or knowledge. Murmurs spread like wind through dry leaves. Then Justice Okonkwo spoke. This began as a loyalty test initiated by Mr. Adewale. But the audit exposed the tester. Marcus swallowed, throat working visibly. He looked at me across the space between us. You were loyal, he whispered, loud enough to carry. My eyes softened with grief and compassion mixing. Yes. But you weren't. Not to me. Not to those families. A pause. The room held its breath. Then Justice Okonkwo delivered the unexpected turn. Because of Mrs. Adewale's documented integrity and refusal to become complicit, we are transferring certain protected assets into a public trust, under her stewardship, strictly for restitution and community rebuilding. I blinked, stunned. What? Justice Okonkwo looked at me directly. You will oversee the fund that repairs what was broken. If you accept. My voice came out small. You're giving me his wealth. No, she said firmly. We're giving you the responsibility he avoided. The room erupted in whispers. I looked at Benjamin. He nodded encouragement. I accept, I said. Weeks later, the market smelled of roasted maize and hope threading through the morning air. The same vendor who once added tomatoes to my small purchase, Mrs. Adebayo, now watched me walk through, no longer ashamed, no longer hidden, but purposeful. I didn't arrive with a parade or photographers. I arrived with plans rolled under my arm and dirt still under my fingernails from planting the first garden. A small community center had opened near the workshop, clean water source nearby, apprentices training in useful trades, widows selling goods without predatory rent, children learning alongside working. Benjamin supervised repairs, laughter returning to his apprentices like birdsong after rain. The skeptical neighbor, Mrs. Chukwu, came one morning, lingering at the edge, waiting to see arrogance or pride. I approached her with a calm smile. You can apply for a stall here too. We have space. She blinked, surprised. After what I said about you. I nodded. Kindness isn't a reward for good behavior. It's a decision we make regardless. Her face softened slightly. Somewhere across the city, Marcus sat in a smaller house, stripped of illusion and empire, facing the quiet punishment of self-awareness and the slow work of making amends. Theodore was in prison, where fraud sent people who thought they were too clever to be caught. And I, once tested like an object, measured like a product, had become the one who turned a test into restoration. The first family to receive restitution was Benjamin's. 42 more waited. I visited each one personally. Not because I had to. Because they deserved to be seen. Because every signature on those old contracts represented a life, not just a transaction. One evening, I stood at the community center watching children play in the courtyard we'd built where empty lots once stood. Mr. Okafor had planted roses there, the same seedlings I'd replanted in my old garden. Benjamin approached, wiping his hands on a rag. You look tired. I smiled. Good tired. The kind that comes from building, not breaking. He nodded. 43 families. Some are healing. Some will take longer. And Marcus? I asked, though I already knew. He writes letters, Benjamin said. Apologizing. Some people burn them. Some people read them. And you? I read one, he admitted. Then I burned it. Maybe I'll read the next one differently. We stood in comfortable silence. Mrs. Adebayo walked past, carrying vegetables. She waved, calling out, "The tomatoes are good today." I waved back, warmth spreading through my chest. When someone tests your loyalty with humiliation, I said quietly, they aren't measuring your love, they're exposing their fear. Benjamin considered this. And sometimes the audit you survive becomes the truth that frees others. I nodded. A child ran past, laughing, chasing another through the garden where justice was slowly learning to look like community. I thought about Marcus, alone with his consequences. About Theodore, trapped by his choices. About the 43 families learning to trust again. And I thought about myself, no longer just a wife, but a steward of repair. The test had tried to break me. Instead, it had revealed what I was made of. And what I was made of, it turned out, was stronger than anyone, including me, had known. Do you believe loyalty should ever be tested? Or should character be trusted until proven otherwise? I knew my answer now.